Pain, confusion, and fear are just some of the common symptoms for people experiencing suspected chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE for short. But a new type of therapy is shining a light on ways to prevent and treat the disease. Tonight, we want to introduce you to a former athlete who says that this new therapy has had a life-changing impact.
I probably had at least 8 to 10 concussions in high school. We used to laugh about, oh, he's seeing stars, oh, you got your bell rung. Those are all signs of a concussion.
It was in high school when Rico discovered his love for football. As a linebacker, he was drawn to the game's intensity and strategy. He didn't just play football, he studied it and went on to play for Oregon State. But by the time he started,
I was up to probably 25 concussions, and I had had 3 hospitalized. I would go out and have my first hit at practice and then go puke in a corner because I was so disoriented and having balance issues. The migraines and head pressure I had, I was taking 1,200 milligrams of Advil a day.
The wear and tear on his body through the years would ultimately halt his professional career. But in 2021, as he entered his 40s, everything began to change. After a major family crisis, Rico suddenly found himself stressed and overwhelmed. Deep down, he knew his body was reacting to more.
I was having restless leg syndrome where I was literally tearing holes in my sheets. I was almost at the point where I needed assisted air. I would walk somewhere or just be sitting and just start sweating profusely. I had massive head pressure. Tinnitus just came out of nowhere. I was having light sensitivity, sound sensitivity, depression. I got to a point where even going to work, I was starting to have suicidal ideation. I was thinking about, driving off the bridge that crosses the Sacramento River, going to West Sac.
That's when Rico decided to get help. Every diagnosis seemed to point back to one thing: neurological issues. Rico sharing his brain scans revealed extensive damage.
One of the neurologists shared it with a fellow neurologist who didn't know my history. And the neurologists commented that they thought I was the victim of a gunshot wound to the head because I had had so much damage to the left frontal lobe of my brain.
Dr. Margaret Naser is a research professor of neurology at Boston University School of Medicine. She's extensively researched the effects of traumatic brain injuries and chronic traumatic encephalopathy, also known as CTE.
CTE is a progressive neurodegenerative disease where there is repetitive trauma to the brain itself. It happens over years and years.
There is no cure for CTE and currently no way to diagnose it in a living person. An official diagnosis can only be made after death through examination of brain tissue.
And they look at the brain and they find abnormal protein deposits. And as it goes over time, the whole brain is covered.
According to the Cleveland Clinic, CTE permanently destroys nerve cells in the brain, causing significant changes in behavior, mood, and cognitive function. CTE can affect memory, decision-making, and problem-solving. It can also impact the part of the brain responsible for emotional regulation, leading some people to experience anxiety, depression, mood swings, and thoughts of self-harm. Motor function can also be affected, causing balance problems and loss of coordination. CTE has gained growing attention over the years, not just in professional athletes, but also in everyday people and veterans who have suffered repeated head injuries. Researchers are still trying to determine why CTE develops in some people, but not in others.
This is red and near infrared light.
In an effort to reclaim his life, Rico enrolled in a study through the University of Utah.
I didn't know how bad I was until I started doing some of these tests. I couldn't walk a straight line, couldn't do a figure-8 test. Memory tests, they'd show me pictures of a cat, a dog, a bird, a fish. I would remember, out of 8 things, I would remember maybe 1 or 2.
The study uses red light therapy developed by a company called V-Light.
Our devices are all recognized to be low-risk general wellness.
V-Light uses wavelength technology to shine light through the scalp and reach parts of the brain. It helps wake up cells and mitochondria to produce more energy to help the brain cells heal.
In our case, we use one through the nose. It's the most logical way to reach the brain because there's nothing between the light source and the brain.
The company has conducted multiple studies involving people with traumatic brain injuries, Alzheimer's disease, and military-related head trauma, and is currently seeking FDA approval. Rico says after about 2 weeks of using the device, his sleeping, energy, and cognition started to improve.
I was able to do all those tests without issue. By the 6-month study, it was like game day.
Rico is hopeful about this new treatment, and he hopes by sharing his experience, it gives other people hope.
They're scared. Their families are scared. They want to keep their job. They're living in silence. They're suffering unneedlessly because they don't know what to do about it.
If you could go back and tell your younger self something, what would you say?
Well, it's interesting because when I first understood that this was the condition, I still was defending football because I love it. I love the game. I love what it did for me. You know, I think about things that matter now, which is like seeing my daughter get married, you know, walk her down the aisle, or seeing my son be successful with his career. Is that 4 years or, 8 years of playing a sport worth a lifetime of the pain? And I think there's a lot of changes in science right now. There's a lot of exciting things. Maybe CTE will eventually be something of the past. Maybe a combination of better safety practices with sport, limiting ages to play, treatments and protocols that work like this, that maybe future generations won't have to endure this.
Now, there is an NFL team evaluating this new treatment. Also, world champions and MVPs from tennis, basketball, UFC, MMA, just to name a few, have used V-Light for a number of years. And I also just want to say, Rico, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. You were incredibly brave, and we are thrilled to see you doing so well.